Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran and Erik, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Erik Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 6. Publishing to JSR is a sheer joy. And I agree.
Is it?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was pretty great.
Oh, so you did and I did. We both published to JSR.
We both published to JSR for this episode.
Awesome. We'll get into it after the news. But how was your week?
It was good. I got a lot of good news. I found out that I was nominated to be on the Independent Game Developers Association Twin Cities board. So I'm not on it, but if I am elected, I will be. So that was a pleasant surprise.
That's sweet.
I said yes to the nomination. So
what would that entail? What would you do?
It's mostly volunteer. It's a volunteer organization around game devs in the Twin Cities area. I've been pretty active the last year and there's a bunch of good folks there. So if you're in the Twin Cities area or in your local area, look for a chapter and check it out. I've learned a ton and everyone's super chill and super nice. So I recommend checking it out. Speaking of Excalibur, I've been working on multi-pass shaders. So I'm very close. I've posted a couple examples of it working in my dev branch locally. It's still a little clunky to API wise. So I'm hewing the marble into a shape that hopefully resembles David and not like something like a pile of rocks. I'm doing that and it's very close. So hopefully I'll be able to cut that in the newest version of Excalibur, maybe this weekend, maybe next.
What is the advantage of multipass? I assume that multipass means that it goes over more than once. So I guess the default is a single pass. What's the difference?
That's a great question. Actually, I probably should have explained it, but there are certain effects that are really hard to achieve with a single pass. And a lot of them involve like bloom or blur or posterize or edge detection. So like things some of these you might be able to like hack a single pass through, but it's really difficult to do.
Nice. I know bloom. So just in case people don't know what like shaders are in games and stuff, that's what adds these post-processing effects essentially. So if you've played a game where you've seen like sunlight filtering through a window and it like does a lens flare type of deal, I think that's usually done via shader.
Yeah. And it's a super cool effect and currently really hard to achieve in Excalibur without multipass. So look forward to that. Also, I've made the mistake of playing a lot of Balatro. So now I'm working on a game that involves playing cards. Pray for me.
Balatro's such a good game. Oh my God, it's so good.
Oh, it's so addictive.
For anyone who hasn't played this yet, if you haven't played it, you gotta play it. You can get it on your phone now too, but you can also get it on Steam, and I think it's on Switch. But if you've played poker before, so you know that there's poker hands that you can play. But this is not really a poker game. You're basically playing against the computer, and you get scored based on your poker hands, and then they get modified via these jokers that you can collect. Like they increase your multipliers or they make certain cards score a different way. And so you can chain them all together and you can create really satisfying combos.
Yeah, it's really like big on the chain reaction kind of line go up, number go up. So it's very satisfying to construct like a chain reaction to get a big score. In other news, a project made in Excalibur made the GameDev.js newsletter, Retroski, which is built in TypeScript and Excalibur. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, check out the newsletter. There's a whole write-up on Retroski. So what's up with you?
I've got published a course. We talked about this AI agents course before. So I finally published it last week. It's got really good reception so far. And I was happy to get that out of the way. So that's pretty fun. And then I just got signed up to do the OpenAI Deep Research course. And there's a whole bunch of open alternatives and other alternatives like Perplexity has a deep research as well. So I'll be diving a little bit into that. And that's another short course. It's only going to be like 15 or 20 minutes. The other cool thing, in addition to that course, I'm working on a lab right now, which is TypeScript using React. So that's something I've been doing for such a long time. And I had done written guides on that before, But this is like an interactive code lab. So I'm hoping that will be pretty useful. And other than that, I've just been plugging away on keep track of my games. So like I said before, I'm working on playthrough tracking. And now I'm on to completions. If you think about games that you play and you like finish them, or you beat the story, or you go even farther and you beat the achievements like 100%, you need some way to log those completions, is what they're called. So you can sort of log your completions as you play rather than doing it after the fact. So anyway, that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. All right. Moving on, news for the week of February 10th, 2025. First up, TypeScript 5.8 release candidate came out. Starting off with a little bit of sad news is there's a partial revert for the checked return access. That has been reverted for the stated reason that it doesn't really work very well with object types. So we'll have to wait for that in 5.9. But they did include some fixes for branches with conditional return expressions. So previously there was a bug where if you had a ternary, it wouldn't catch where things could possibly be undefined. So that's good. But I was sad to see that a return type narrowing with type checked access being reverted, which is a bummer. But I'm glad that they're focusing on making the feature better for 5.9.
And that was the feature that we got a little bit excited about when we talked about the beta too, like being able to narrow.
I was very excited.
Narrow types. Yeah.
Yeah. And also a quick reminder is you can now require ESM from within common modules, which was previously not permitted in Node, but now in the TypeScript flag module Node Next, they've relaxed that type restriction unless there's a top level await. That's the same as the beta. And then I have a small correction. I misspoke about lib replacement in the 5.8 beta. That feature had actually been there since TypeScript 4.5.
Oh.
The lib replacement thing does is it turns it off because it's a performance bottleneck and it's on by default. So you might need to turn it off if you have a big node modules. So that's something I misspoke about. So it's still a powerful feature, like to be able to do DOM type replacement, but you might want to turn it off.
Gotcha.
And they also hinted in the blog post that it might become the default to have it set to false. You'll need to turn it on with lib replacement true if you're using that feature. So next up is some news from Deno regarding JSR. They are moving to an open governance board, which is actually pretty exciting. Right now, NPM is run by GitHub, and that governance is completely behind closed doors. And up the chain, it's technically Microsoft that owns GitHub, which owns NPM down the chain. So now they are proposing an independent governing board of directors with a governance charter. So right now, the board members are Evan Yu from Void Zero, Isaac Schluter, the creator of NPM, James Snell, the Node.js technical steering committee member and principal engineer at Cloudflare, Luca Casanato, dev at Deno, and Ryan Dahl of Node.js and Deno fame. So they're going to be monthly and discuss the future of JSR. That's pretty slick. And this is just their commitment to being open. And it's actually pretty cool to see.
That's neat. And we'll talk more about JSR in a minute. But this has some implications for like how the community can bring ideas to the board, it seems.
Exactly. Next up, if you got excited about erasable syntax only, Josh Goldberg's got you with a new ESLint plugin. ESLint plugin erasable syntax only. So you can go and get that going right away and download that. Very exciting. Josh Goldberg, consummate TypeScript wizard.
Nice. This is for
very
folks.
Awesome.
Would this be for folks who are not using the TSC flag erasable syntax only, but have ESLint?
I think you could slice it a couple ways. One is you could use this as a way of migrating to the new TypeScript 5.8 erasable syntax flag in a low stakes way because it's lint instead of like a compiler error. So your builds can still work potentially, and then you could have the ESLint and you can knock them off incrementally. So that might be one reason to reach for it. Another reason is 5.8 is still in beta and release candidate. So if you wanted it today, you wanted it now, you could reach for this as well. So I think those are two maybe things that come to mind for me when you're reaching for it.
Yeah, actually, that is a good point, because if you're working on a big team and you have a mono repo, even with just a lot of packages, and you want to migrate to erasable syntax only, as soon as you enable that flag, your builds are going to start failing. So your choice is either enable it per package and then tackle one package at a time, but those could be really big PRs, or you could adopt the ESLint method and just set it to warn. But then the trade-off is that you got to make sure that you actually do the thing. Otherwise, we all know what happens with ESLint warnings. Over time, developers just start to ignore them. But that, as part of a migration process, like that could definitely be pretty viable.
Yeah. And I recommend you check it out. Really cool stuff. I'm probably just going to turn it on in Excalibur and start working down that, because we have a lot of enums running around. And I think that's the majority of the things that we need to do. Next up, not really web dev, but just normal dev. I'm a Windows dev, and Windows Terminal 1.22 came out with a ton of cool stuff. But the thing that I care about the most is they support Sixel graphics. So you can display graphics in your terminal. So you can get like images, animations, videos, and stuff like that. And I like that. It's just me. I like it a lot. I couldn't get the latest version through the Windows Store for some reason at the time of this recording. So I had to use WinGet to pull it down, and they have the version out. So if you want to pull it down with WinGet, you can get it. I have confirmed that it works, and I play with, there's a program called Chafa, CHAFA, which is an open source program for taking an image and producing either like Kitty out graphics for the Kitty terminal, or Sixel graphics, or whatever you need to do with a image to display it in the terminal. So pretty cool.
Okay, so first of all, we're celebrating that there is a new Windows terminal release, which I never would have expected in my whole life. But second of all, you said Sixel graphics, Sixel. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. It stands for 6 pixels, if I am not mistaken. And it's like a kind of a convoluted way of describing colors to the terminal.
Okay.
And I couldn't explain it to you. I looked at it and I was like, I'm glad that someone else figured that out. It's not clear to me how it makes graphics happen.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that it does.
It's funny because I'm making fun of Windows Terminal, but it is really good. I'd used ConEmu previously on Windows. I tried to use Hyper for a while, and now I'm just using Windows Terminal because it works really well. It looks really nice, so it has really nice font smoothing now. It has multiple tabs. You can customize the appearance. They really did a good job in Windows 11 with the new terminal. Oh, yeah. And that reminds me, can you use the new Windows terminal with Windows 10, or do you have to have Windows 11? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you can use it on Windows 10. I'd be surprised if you couldn't. I've been surprised before.
But if you have access to it, you can check it out, especially if you like using Windows subsystem for Linux.
Yeah. And I might be in the minority of folks that are deving on Windows, but I'm doing a lot of game stuff, so that might be my excuse. But I use NeoVim in Windows Terminal daily for my job.
Yeah.
And it works great.
Nice. Oh, and that reminds me, I just found a new cross-prompt shell, or cross-shell prompt called Starship. It's built in Rust. So it's super, super fast. And you can basically enable these plugins that do all sorts of stuff to your prompt. So I think in the past, trying to customize your prompt, especially even on Windows, can be really tough if you're using PowerShell and stuff. This just makes it really simple. It has a really simple configuration file, and it works across shells. So on my Mac, I'm using Zish, and then on Windows, I'm using PowerShell. But I can have the same Starship config across both of my machines. Ooh. And both prompts will work. Like it's the same exact configuration. So if people are interested in customizing their prompt and looking like a lead hacker, you can check out Starship. Now, you mentioned in the latest TypeScript 5.8 release candidate, you can now require ESM in CommonJS. That is a new Node feature, but it got backported to Node 20, which is one of the current LTSs.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, so this, I think, was one of the steps that people were waiting for, one of the milestones people are waiting for to migrate fully over to ESM. And we already discussed that, so we don't need to rehash that conversation. But obviously, there's still going to be folks with backwards compatibility needs. And Node 18, its end of life is April 30th. So for folks that are still on Node 18, just be aware that by April 30th, it's going to be end of life. So make sure that you get to Node 20 or Node 22. But yeah, so now the restriction is removed so that in your common JS module, you can require an ESM module. So that's pretty sweet.
As long as it doesn't have a top level await.
As long as it doesn't have a top level await. Great. There's your nuance for you. The other big thing that was going around the community is that the React team finally came out with a blog post that officially deprecates Create React App. They've technically also updated Create React App to work with 19. So in case people do use it, it will work. But they've got like a deprecation notice now and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's good. I think the community was a little lukewarm on it. I think that the React team has a big focus on frameworks. I think the issue is that for a beginner, there's a lot of mental cognitive overhead to adopting like a framework. So it might seem simple at first, but then as soon as you get down a little bit deeper, you have to learn what the framework's patterns are, its conventions, and things like that, where if you're just coming from Create React App or you're just trying to learn React, moving to Vite is a little bit of a lighter lift.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think on the side where we're critical of recommending Next to beginners is it dilutes the learning of React. If you're trying to learn React, now am I learning React or am I learning this is a Next concept or is this a React router concept? What's React and what isn't?
I'm in there. What they call build your own framework mode. That's the mode that I'm in. And I think that a lot of people come to React that way because one of the things people liked about React, at least initially, was that you could build your own framework. It wasn't just a baked in Angular type of thing that was really opinionated about how you use stuff. And now it feels like React is evolving to be like, maybe you just should use a framework because of all these different things, suspense, server components, streaming, routing, all this kind of stuff. It's a real big pain to try to build your own framework around if you need to. And so I do agree with that. Like I can't add SSR to my app even if I wanted to. So I don't know. It's a complex issue. I think maybe they should have listened to the community a little bit more and maybe elevated Vite to like, here's a sort of lateral move. You're just looking for something simple to move from Create React App. However, for these reasons, we think that you could also be better suited to a framework. All right. Erik, have you heard of Interop 2025?
I haven't really.
Okay, so neither have I until I saw this on Blue Sky. But apparently, a bunch of the browser vendors have been getting together for the past couple of years and trying to agree on interoperability between all these different platforms. So for example, for Interop 2024, the vendors came together and said, what kind of APIs can we implement consistently across our different browsers so that web developers can target those APIs and be confident that their code will run. So the two notable ones were the Popover API and CSS nesting, which I didn't even know. I knew that CSS nesting was part of the new standard, but I did not know that it's now interoperable between, I think the browsers are Mozilla, Safari, Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome. So CSS nesting works in all of those. So that's pretty cool. And for 2025, the list looks pretty good. They've got view transitions on there. They've got JSON module scripts, which means importing JSON from modules, from ESM modules. Core Web Vitals. So rather than Chrome just having Core Web Vitals, you'll get that in all the browsers. WebAssembly, which I think is a big one, and WebRTC, which I have not used, but I think plenty of people use it for like multiplayer and other types of collaborative apps. So getting those APIs interoperable between these different browsers, I think is pretty cool. We'll link to that. I think there was some pushback on the Interop board from Microsoft Edge team because, as we've talked about before, Safari is becoming hard to target because they are moving slow and they don't want to implement all these different web APIs. So
standards.
Yeah, the Microsoft Edge team had some choice words for Apple and Safari. Hopefully, if they get enough pushback, and maybe the stuff that's happening in the EU, with the EU pushing back on Apple, maybe that will put some pressure on them to get their act together.
One can only hope.
Sweet. New releases in the ecosystem. Prettier 3.5 was released with better TypeScript support. Yeah, so that's good. So if you're not using Deno, where formatting is built in, and you're still using Prettier, which a lot of people I'm sure still are, you now have better TypeScript support in 3.5. So you can read more about that. The other thing is that Astro 5.3, a minor release, was just released. And I think the major thing there is that it has better performance for components that are async. So I think before it would treat all the components as if they would use async. And now it only renders components async if they use async. So that speeds up builds quite a bit. Cool. Moving on to some community highlights. What's been happening in the TypeScript community? I saw a tutorial from Free Code Camp where they teach you how to build a React and TypeScript project, Wheel of Names. I've not looked into the exact scope of this project, but it's a cool tutorial you can check out if you're new to using React and TypeScript. There was a really cool video from Alex Rusin. He has a video on using the repository pattern and clean architecture with TypeScript and Prism. And we have not done an episode or really talked about ORMs, data ORMs yet for TypeScript, but Prism is one of them. And so I think this could be a great video if you are used to .NET clean architecture patterns and maybe you want to implement that in your TypeScript app. So definitely check that video out. So the title of this episode is The Sheer Joy of Publishing to JSR, and that is thanks to Welch Canavan. I came across his post on Blue Sky. He published a package to JSR and he did a blog post on why it was so nice. And that was the title of his blog post. So I'm like, oh, that's so good. We need to do an episode on this. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into JSR, but Welch has a great write-up on his experience, and we'll talk about our experience too. Our good friend Axel Roschmeyer is on a roll. He has 4 blog posts that came out this week. He's got extracting parts of composite types via infer, which is really cool. I have not really used the infer keyword too much before. He's got a nice detailed guide to tsconfig.json. So if you want to optimize your tsconfig, he's got a post on it. If you use TypeDoc, like we do for Excalibur, he's got a post on testing code examples and comment docs. So that would be cool for us.
Very relevant to us.
Yeah. And then he's also got, he published a post on mapped types. And we haven't talked about mapped types, but maybe in a future Secrets of the Handbook segment, we'll talk about mapped types, but those are also really powerful. I saw a cool discussion from DayJ on Blue Sky. They mentioned that they migrated all their Node.js projects to Deno. And I was like, that's cool. What did you learn? Do you have a blog post? He said, no, I don't got a blog post, but I do have a few tips. So he said that they started by replacing packages with Deno equivalents, meaning that if I was using Express, if I'm migrating to Deno, I would replace it with Oak because that is the replacement package. And like you mentioned too, Erik, if I was using a SQLite package in Node, Deno has their own SQLite package. So you start with those packages, just replace them with whatever the Deno equivalent is. Then he said, check if a package has compatibility, like your NPM packages. And he said 95% of them did. So they didn't have any problem with migrating those NPM packages over. So you just use them in Deno because of the NPM compatibility layer. And then finally, if the 5% don't work, you can either replace them with packages that do work, or you can write your own. So that's where like the last little bit where you might have to do some work when migrating your Node.js project. So I thought those were some nice tips.
And that's actually a really excellent testimonial because I haven't done a migration yet. So I don't know what the hit rate is on success. And that seems like it was pretty good, pretty reasonable.
Happy enough to post about it.
Awesome. Next up in the community, we have Library Watch, Near to Mirror, posted on Blue Sky, a new ESLint rule for people like me that like to sort their object properties by type. So if that's you, you can go get that ESLint rule and you can get your big config objects sorted properly. Totally optional if you're someone like me that likes to do this. It's a thing. Another one is Kevin Deng is working on Unloader and Unplugin. Basically, one loader and plugin to rule them all. This is building your files using OXC, like we talked about, I think, last episode. Effectively, it just makes it easy. So you have one loader for a node. It'll load and build all of the files and output the right thing. And then for things like Vite and Rollup and Webpack, You have Unplugin, which will do the same thing using OXE.
So one loader to rule them all, and in the darkness.
Exactly.
Cool. And he mentioned it's still a big work in progress. Very experimental.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good call out. Yeah, it's just something to watch. Very whip. Another thing that was reskeeted by Deno is a new community project, a bundler for Deno called dsbuild, which is very interesting. It supports React, JavaScript, TypeScript, obviously, and Markdown MDX out of the box. The documentation is like a little lacking, so it wasn't super clear all of the things that it could do or how to do it. But hey, a new bundler.
Okay. So if I don't want to use Vite for some reason, I might want to use dsbuild. That's definitely something to check out if that sounds interesting. TypeScript FM is sponsored by Excalibur.js, the friendly TypeScript game engine for the web. Like many of you, I got into computers because I loved video games and dreamed of making one, but game development always felt a bit intimidating. Instead, I built a career in web development, though that dream of making games never really went away. Then I met Erik, who showed me I could use my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills to create games with just a bit of game design knowledge and the right engine. Excalibur.js makes game development approachable, offering everything you need to build 2D web games. Arcade physics, sprites, animations, input support, and integrations with tools like Tiled and Sprite. It's beginner-friendly, yet flexible enough to grow with you. Our team has published 10 games using Excalibur, all written in TypeScript. If you're a web developer looking to dip your toes into game dev or sharpen your TypeScript skills, give Excalibur.js a try at excalibur.js.com. Click the big tutorial button to start building your first game, Excalibur, a Flappy Bird clone. After that, join our friendly Discord community of web developers who love to help each other and share game dev tips. Sweet. Are we ready to talk about our main topic today?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Well, I've got a quick question for you. What is a pirate's favorite package registry?
JSR.
JSR. That's right. We've been talking about JSR a bunch now, but we covered it briefly in the Deno episode. So I think people have an idea of what it is, but it is an open alternative / drop-in replacement for NPM, but it's built by the Deno team. And it is separate from Deno, but they maintain it. It's open source, non-commercial, and I don't believe they have any plans to commercialize it. It's governed by this open governance board. And I think one of the big questions is like, when do I use it as a developer? And what are the differences between JSR and NPM? What does it bring to the table that NPM can't do for me right now? So they say on their website that it has native ESM publishing and package support. So it's ESM first. And because it's Deno, it's also TypeScript first. And it even packages up your type declarations. So think for TypeScript developers, JSR is really cool. It provides a lot of really neat features. One of those features is because it can generate your type declarations, it also sucks up all your types because it compiles it in the background, and it can produce documentation on your package automatically. So before, where like you'd have to use TypeDoc or some other tool to generate your documentation, deploy it separately as like a static site, JSR just does that for you on the package page. So there's like a docs tab, and then you can view the API, and it takes in all your JS doc comments or TS doc comments and stuff. So that's pretty sweet. And then the other thing that it offers is compatibility with NPM. So you can install JSR packages through NPM using a special command. So even if you're using Node.js, you can use JSR if there's packages there.
Yeah, and the way that it works under the hood is it adds an NPM RC file and points at the JSR NPM endpoint under the hood. So you can use your JSR specifiers inside your Node project, and it'll just work.
Yep. And so how you're used to installing an NPM package where you say like NPM install package name. If you want to install a package from JSR, you have to use npx. So you would say npx JSR add your package. And so that JSR is like a special, I think it is an NPM package called JSR. And it just does that little thing where it just takes care of your npm-rc configuration file and makes sure that it can resolve the references correctly. But it's a helper that they created so that you can just use npx JSR add, and then it'll add your JSR package to your package JSON.
That's super slick. I'm a fan.
Should go without saying, but there are equivalent commands for pnpm, yarn, bunx, depending on what runtime you're using. There's commands for each one of them to install packages from JSR.
Awesome. And the other thing that's really cool about it is they've been really thinking about security. And this last several years, we've seen the deficiencies in NPM, especially around like supply chain attacks. So they have a bunch of features to increase the security of your packages in JSR. One of them is using code provenance, currently only supported on GitHub Actions right now. But if you're building in GitHub Actions, they will verify that the source code and the package match. So you can be confident that no one snuck in between, or you're a library author has a GitHub repo that says one thing, but the package says another. It's like a malicious library author. The other thing that's really interesting is JSR is immutable by default, meaning you can't change packages after they've been published. And they have a lot of like specific rules if you want to check it out. And it's slightly different than NPM. NPM is also immutable asterisk to a certain point, certain degree, but JSR is a little more strict about it than NPM is. The other thing that's interesting is they force you to have a package scope. So there's no unscoped packages. You must scope your packages. And you can't squat packages and like extort people. In fact, they will just take it away from you if you're a squatter. So they have a whole document about how to report squatting, or if someone's trying to sell you a scope, just report them and they'll take it away. So if you are like a company that by trademark should own a scope, no one can like swoop in and masquerade as you and, distribute packages that look like they are legit.
Good. No selling scopes on street corners from dodgy guys, right?
That's right.
No trench coats opening full of scopes to choose from.
The other thing that's interesting about JSR is it's not a CDN. So typically, and this kind of calls back to the ESM.sh, is what you would do if you want to consume a JSR package from a browser. There was an experiment we talked about in a previous episode where you could use JSR from a browser. Probably shouldn't do that, though, based on some of the conversations that we saw recently. Currently, ESM.sh is the recommended way to do it. And there are still some conversations happening. But for now, for browser apps, you should consume JSR, like either you should bundle it and build it like you would normally. And in that case, there's nothing for you to do different. But if you're trying to like download a JSR package live in a browser, you should use esm.sh to do it.
Yeah. Can we pause here for a second, just so as the audience, I'm trying to understand. So what you're saying is that if I want to reference a JSR package using ESM in import from the browser, so using a native browser module, I can't say import whatever I need to from http:// jsr.io/ here's my package name and version. That doesn't work, right? And I think the distinction here is that JSR is just a registry. It is not a CDN service that you can just import stuff from directly. But what you can do is you can use esm.sh, which is a CDN and transpilation service. Mm-hmm. So it is like a proxy to these different registries, including JSR. So in this case, I would say import, for example, sum of, which is part of the standard collection library. I could say import sum of from esm.sh/JSR/ the package name standard collections. You can do the full URL specifier, and yes, that will work. And I tested that locally on my machine. It works fine. But what you can't do is you can't say HTTP //JSR.io/package name. That doesn't work. And I think it's a little confusing because in their documentation, it says that you can use JSR in any ESM native runtime, which to me sounds like you could use it in the browser native
Exactly. That's
runtime.
how I interpret it as
Yeah.
well.
So I think maybe just a little bit of feedback to the JSR team, maybe clean up that language a little bit because otherwise it could be a little confusing. Or at least to say, if you want to use it in the browser, here's how you do it. Cool. I mean, like that's information for consumers. Now, me and you are both maintainers and you more so than I. So as a maintainer, I think there's a few questions that we wanted to help answer. So one of those questions are, should you publish your package to both NPM and JSR? And the answer is you don't have to, because you can still install JSR packages using npx JSR add. So consumer-wise, for your end consumers, they can just execute that command. So that is the command that you present to them in your documentation. And then, yeah, you could, I guess, if you want to, but the answer is you don't have to. So I think the only reason you might is if you have two types of packages. If you have your ESM only package, you put on JSR. And if you do create a UMD build, a universal module definition build, or a common JS build, then I would put that one on NPM. So that would maybe be the one case where you would deploy to both. Another good question is, can you publish private packages? And the answer is yes, with a nuance, but mostly no. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And they are talking about it. So we'll include this in the show notes. They have some documentation about this, and they have some links to some issues where they're tracking private repositories. But there is a way to kind of do it. So what they recommend in the JSR documentation for private registries right now is to use JSR as an upstream for an NPM private registry. So you can have JSR as your upstream, and you can have private packages there in like maybe your self-host or whatever. And then you do your, NPM upstreaming so that you can control packages in that NPM private repository. So roughly speaking, that translates to these options are acting as a proxy for JSR. The bummer is currently it doesn't work with Artifactory. And that's because they are using like a different layout of the tarball URLs between JSR and the one expected by Artifactory. There is an issue for it, but that's the one I use. I use Artifactory right now for doing private repositories. But for the other popular options, there are ways to do JSR then upstream. So that's currently the recommendation.
Okay. So long story short is that it's hard to do it and it needs to be proxied. But hopefully in the future, once it's supported in Artifactory, I think that'll make people's lives a lot easier. Cool. What are some of the conventions or other features of JSR that are worth noting?
Yeah, I think one thing that you see a lot of right now is they use a mod for module.ts. And this is just a convention. And that's like Go-ish, kind of Rustish, a module file where you're exporting all of the things in your package. So it's a common entry point. You might have seen like index.ts is very common in the web world as your entry point. And then a lot of library authors just do that for like server-side code anyway, index.ts, even whether or not it makes sense for a server-side context. It doesn't really matter. It's just the name of a file that's exporting and it's going to be your entry point. So that's one thing. Another is they really encourage publishing your TypeScript source code. You can technically you can publish ESM and that works. And I tried it and it does work, but they do encourage publishing TS source code. It gives you a lot of benefits that we talked about a little bit, but it gives you a lot of that documentation. It gives you a lot of that built-in support and guarantees from JSR if you publish the TS source code.
Okay, so that means that because it's ESM first, one of my options is that I could run my code through a bundler, which outputs ESM JavaScript, and I could still publish a JSR package. But then I don't get some of those benefits that we talked about. You don't get the packaged up TypeScript declarations for your app. You don't get the TypeScript API docs coming out of the box. So I think for TypeScript developers, you can write your stuff in native TypeScript and just publish it without any build step at all, and JSR will publish it. Or if you're a JavaScript developer, you might want to use a bundler or write your code in native ESM or whatever. You don't have to use a bundler, but that's the difference, is they really prefer it if you publish TypeScript packages, but you don't have to.
Yeah. And I think as long as you make the effort to do the documentation, you can also provide types if you wanted to do that. Speaking of, they also offer a score to packages as a way of naming and shaming, maybe library authors that don't include like documentation. So for example, the presence of a README gives you points, module documentation. So this is like JS doc on your functions and types, best practices. And this is something we've talked about in previous episodes, but the concept of slow types. And this is the idea that if you have to do deep type inference, they don't want to do that. They want you to have that isolated type so that it's easy for the TypeScript compiler to know the type, because if you declare types on everything, it just knows it versus the inference. Discoverability, you should have actual useful information in your package to describe what it is doing. And then also that this is an interesting thing because we are in this new world order of things running in multiple runtimes. They have a compatible runtime feature where you can say, hey, this runs in the browser, but nowhere else. Or this runs in the browser, it runs in Node, it runs in Deno, it runs in Bun. So you can like list off all of the compatible runtimes that your package runs in, and you get rewarded for having more than one compatible runtime. So like they're really trying to push you towards that isomorphic, fancy word for it. It's the same code and it does the same thing everywhere. So they're really trying to push you towards running in multiple places.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And I have some thoughts about that from my experience too. There was a couple other questions I had that were interesting to me as a maintainer. One of those was, can I tag package versions? Like in NPM, you can say, tag this version as beta or tag this one as latest, or latest is the default one, but tag this one as next, for example. So I could say install Excalibur.js at next, and it would just take whatever is tagged. It does not look like you can do that in JSR.
No, there's just the implicit latest, and you will never get, as far as I understand, and we did a little bit of research of this before the show. As far as I understand, you will never get a pre-release version unless you specifically ask for it. So if you need to like specifically ask for a -RC or a -alpha version in order to get it. Otherwise, it'll just pull the latest Semver one and exclude the pre-release style Semver releases.
Yeah, I think
I have a -something suffix.
For folks who are not maintainers, might be wondering, what is a pre-release package? There is a technical definition of a pre-release package. So using Semver, which is semantic versioning, for example, I can say 1.0.0, that's a major release, right? The major version is 1, the minor version is 0, the patch version is 0. If I add a dash and then say I can put any string I want to, so I could say -alpha, that dash denotes a pre-release version. So NPM, don't quote me on this, but I also think it has the same behavior. It won't pull in a pre-release version. If there is one, you have to explicitly say, I want 1.0.0-alpha, and then it'll install it. And it's the same with JSR. But again, don't quote me on that. But what you could do with NPM is you could say, I want to tag that pre-release as next. So I could just say, install Excalibur.js at next, and it would be a pointer to 1.0.0-alpha. And that you cannot do in JSR. So people do have to be explicit about installing pre-release packages. And then you can still do like @2 or @1 if you want the latest 1.0 or the latest 2.0 or things like that.
And I think that's okay, because I think the pre-release thing that's a power user feature.
Yeah.
And you're definitely opting into some like spicy code whenever you're reaching for a pre-release version. So maybe it's okay that you have to be very explicit about it.
Yeah, I think it's fine. For the user experience wise, I think it would be confusing if it started to pull in pre-releases when they probably don't expect that as like just a regular user. The other thing is I'm used to NPM needing API keys to do publishing, like in GitHub Actions and stuff. And one of the pain points is that you've got to rotate them because they don't last forever. So it's a security mechanism, which is good. We do want to rotate our keys, but it's also a maintenance headache because you have to go and update your secrets in your repository and wherever that API key is being used. With JSR, no API keys. It's all just done through OIDC, which I don't remember what it stands for.
OpenID Connect.
Okay, OpenID Connect. Okay, thank you. So it's essentially authenticates through your browser. So like you connect it to your repository via OIDC. So there is no API keys going around. It's using like whatever it does behind the scenes, bearer token, headers, all that kind of good stuff. If you're familiar with OAuth, it's essentially the same deal, but it's between these two systems. So JSR can connect to your GitHub repo. And then through that, when you do like your GitHub publish, you're not passing anything. Like you're not saying use this key or use this secret or whatever. It just handles that for you, which is super nice. So it's zero config, GitHub action publishing. And I set that up in 2 minutes for my package. And I think you did the same, but it was super simple. And you can also publish from your local machine. But then when you publish from your local machine, you don't get that provenance attestation, which is what verifies like your signature. They only support that through GitHub Actions.
Yeah. And that's that, like we guarantee that this GitHub repo matches the source code that was published.
Yep.
So versus if you publish from your own machine, you can do whatever you want. And you don't get the green check in JSR. If you
That's right.
You publish from your local machine. So super easy because all you need to do is add an additional permission. And then GitHub does the negotiation with JSR for you. So you don't need an API key. So it's super easy to do.
Yep. Yeah, no API keys. So it's really nice like developer experience there. What happens if you publish something that you don't want to publish? Do they have a mechanism to get rid of that package?
Yeah, you can unpublish. And what happens is, I think in their documentation, they say the word yanking will hide your package, but it will remain available to download. So it won't be discoverable, but it won't break people's CI builds, I think is the idea.
Right.
And then if you publish something that was an oops and you like published a secret, go and scrub it, but it doesn't really help you that much. You need to go and revoke those secrets because it's on the internet. It's if you published a secret on NPM or you leaked a secret in a repo, like a Git repo, the internet's forever. Someone probably downloaded it. You need to revoke those secrets anyway, but they'll do their best to scrub stuff. But because there's caches and mirrors, it doesn't necessarily help. Yes. And they're going to do it on a case-by-case basis. Otherwise, they're just going to hide it.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that's one of the like sort of nuances between NPM and JSR as a maintainer. In NPM, you can technically unpublish a package and it just gets deleted. Like you can't access it anymore. But the downside of that is that it'll break people if they've been using it. My experience over the weekend, someone had posted on Blue Sky, wouldn't it be nice if I could use map.has and guard my map.get call underneath it? So this is a sort of a long-standing issue with the native typings in TypeScript. If you use like the map class, the JavaScript class, so you like create a new map, and then you have a condition that says, if I have this key, I want to get this key. The problem is that TypeScript is like, when you get that key, it could have the value or it could be undefined. And you're like, no, it's not undefined because it's under my has block. I'm type guarding it. I'm guarding against that. I know that it's not undefined. Unfortunately, the typings are not typed like that. So there is no type guard in place with the default map.has method. A few people were asking about this, and I saw a Stack Overflow question about it. And there was a really nice workaround of augmenting the types on map to enable a type guard. And I was like, that's cool. I wonder if someone has created a package for this. And the answer was no. No one's created a package for it. People just copy pasting it into their global declaration files, which is fine. Totally okay. Do that. But wouldn't it be cool if there was a package you could install and it just had that as part of it? So I created one and I published it to JSR, and it's called @Kamran and Erik, because that's my scope, /TS has guards with dashes in between. I'll obviously link to that in the show notes. But if you import that, I created a guarded map. I created a guarded URL search params and a guarded form data, because all three of those types have a has method, and it's a common pattern to use has and then get right afterwards. So I was able to strongly type those so that they are now type guards. So anytime you use .has, it'll narrow the type so that you don't get a TS error, a compiler error, when you try to cast it to a string or whatever the type is that you get the key from. That's nice. But I did run into a couple things when I did this. The original Stack Overflow answer suggests augmenting the global map type. Okay. And that can be really nice as far as the developer experience because you don't have to change your code. But the downside with any type of global augmentation is that it could break other code, including other library code, like third-party library code. And in fact, JSR also prevents that. And that goes back to this slow typings thing that we were talking about. Because JSR compiles your TypeScript to get the docs and create the type declarations, they do restrict some of the TypeScript that you can write, and they prefer you to use like the isolated modules. So you can technically bypass that, but then you're opting out of some of the automatic code generation and stuff that JSR does behind the scenes. So I could publish my package and I could publish it with global augmentation, but it would not have some of the niceties that JSR provides. And I think as a library author, I think it's also just maybe better to allow people to opt in so that, because I don't want to be responsible if you like enable it and then it breaks some of your other code because you have an edge case where that has method needs to be whatever the native typing is, can't be a type guard. I don't know when that would happen, but there's a reason that the TypeScript team doesn't type it like that. So anyway, that was one thing that I ran into. But other than that, like it was dead simple. It was super easy. I love how it generated the docs. All I did was write my JS docs on my API and it sucked them up and it put them out onto the docs page of the package. And I think the other thing that sort of came to mind was as a maintainer, I think it's going to be increasingly important to have like package consumption tests for each of these runtimes. And I think that I could set it up like in my repo where my GitHub actions run tests for each runtime to make sure that the package works. Because as you mentioned, JSR lets you say, is this package compatible with Bun? Is it compatible with Deno? Is it compatible with Node.js? Is it compatible with browsers and stuff? And you have to go and test it, make sure that it works in all those. Yeah. And so I had to create like little junk projects on my local machine to make sure that I could pull in the package and make sure it works. But I could turn that into actual tests. So I think there's an opportunity for someone out in the audience to create a package testing framework or something super simple for maintainers to be like, hey, do you want to test your package consumption and all these different runtimes? Boom, there you go. Just run this command or something like that. I think that'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, I also shared a lot of the experience and I'm a little jealous because your score on JSR is 94%.
Isn't yours 100?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Mine is far less. So I published, just for giggles, I pulled out the entity component system pattern inside of Excalibur and published it under the JSR package at Excalibur/ECS. My score is currently 47%.
Okay.
Because I did not include a lot of things. I just wanted to get it to work. So Excalibur's got a lot of things that I needed to change in order to, at least this section of Excalibur, not the whole thing. This section of Excalibur needed a lot of things to change before it would publish. You could force it to publish. JSR lets you do things if you decide that you want to go dash do the bad thing. It'll let you do the bad thing. So the thing that was not like a lot of work, you could probably write a script to do this, is like updating the sloppy imports. So they want you to include the file extension on all of it. So like .ts. So I went through and made all those changes. The other one is that we keep talking about these slow types is you have to type everything. So a lot of Excalibur relies on the inference, which is, again, it's a good thing because it improves the performance of the compiler and your dev tooling. It just makes it better, especially if you have a big project. If you're relying on type inference to track through the entire project, it's going to be slower. The other thing that I ran into that wasn't related to JSR was at least my install of NeoVim did not have the Deno LSP available to me in the Mason LSP plugin. And there is one. So I didn't get a chance to configure it and install it in time to try it out.
Awesome. You've got a special secret of the handbook that maybe not everybody's familiar with.
Yeah. So this section, I'm talking about decorators, which are still stage 3. There was a TC39 update that was well received. The slides for the TC39 meeting are up. We're still waiting on browser implementation. I think if we're looking at the slides for the presentation that literally happened this week, I think Edge is nearing completion in V8. SpiderMonkey is around 75% complete. Additional proposals are in a holding pattern until decorators are complete as well. So like the parameter decorators, function decorators, like things that like are blocked by this. Some browser implementers are hesitant to be the first to go. So it's we'll see. So,
yeah, I don't think decorators are on the Interop 2025 agenda.
Yeah, I didn't see them there either.
Yeah, maybe in the future. But that means that probably not all the browsers are going to implement decorators even once it becomes a standard right away.
Yeah. But the new decorators, not the legacy decorators, the new decorators based on the TC39 feature in TypeScript are available to you since TypeScript 5.0. The way that it works is it down levels it into JavaScript. And Duality, Dr. Axel Roschmeyer has a great post on that from 2022. So we'll link to that as well.
Okay, so just to be clear, it is supported in TypeScript 5, but that is not supported in erasable syntax mode. Is that right?
That is correct.
Because
yes.
it's that runtime omit feature, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So do you want to take a step back for a second and just for someone who's not familiar with the decorator, has never seen them before, like what are they good for and what do they look like?
Yeah, decorators are a type of metaprogramming where you want to run code on your code, roughly speaking. And commonly they're used for, if you're familiar with like aspect-oriented programming, or if you've used like .NET attributes, those are, you can think of those as decorators. But they really, what they boil down to is they wrap code. And a lot of times they're used for like logging or telemetry or profiling or doing some kind of modification to your code. It's really like a type of metaprogramming. And this is a lot of times like used for like cross-cutting concerns. And what do I mean by that? Logging is cross-cutting. Like you don't want to re-implement logging everywhere. So you might use a decorator to do it.
Maybe authorization and authentication.
Exactly. That's another good example, especially in .NET.
Would it be safe to say that decorators are very, like they're syntactic sugar over higher order functions? That
is a perfect explanation. That is exactly what they are.
Okay. Because you decorate stuff with the @ symbol, right? You say @ my decorator name. So for example, let's just imagine in your mind, dear listener, you've got a class person. And right above the keyword class, you add an @ sign and you type in admin, @admin. Now, whatever that means to you, whatever that means to your program, you could implement that. So you define the decorator somewhere in a different file and you invoke the decorator through the @ syntax. And then you can pass it options. So it's like a function, basically. You can pass it parameters and stuff. But the magic happens because the decorator receives that class like as a argument automatically. And so then you could do stuff based on it. So you can say if person.name is Kamran, admin is true. So I'm going to enable admin functionality or whatever. And so it is that sort of like reflection type of meta programming. Is that a good description?
Yeah, no, totally. And It's a thing you can use in TypeScript today. I know a lot of people are a little hesitant now. Fooled me once after the legacy decorators had to be walked back. The OXC project has an issue right now. They are working diligently on having support for the ECMAScript decorators. And they also have support for legacy decorators because they need to be able to support legacy code as well. So there's an issue we can link in the show notes there, but It's a tool in your toolbox. I use it typically in my projects for profiling. And then I have some magic that strips them out for my prod builds. So
Very nice. People can go check that out if they are interested in decorators. There's a couple cool things that we saw this last week. For me, I came across a post by Kat, and they were posting about vanilla extract. Do you know about vanilla extract? Have you heard about that?
I heard about it on a podcast, and I've completely forgotten. It's familiar to me.
Yeah. So you can basically write your CSS in TypeScript, but then it extracts that resulting CSS into variables and static CSS for better performance.
Awesome. Some cool stuff for me. I'm a big Lit fan, Lit HTML, which is a web component framework from Google. They have a blog post that they put out in October of last year about using signals with Lit. And it's in their Lit Labs. So you can go check that blog post out in the show notes. And Lit Labs this is not guaranteed. This is loosey-goosey, but if you want to play with it, it's under the Lit Labs package, and it's using the polyfill for the TC39 signals proposal. So if you want to play with that in Lit, I'm a big Lit fan. I use Lit on all my side stuff. I've been using it in the browser extension for Excalibur. So all of the UI is Lit based in that. And in the Excalibur editor that is currently unreleased, that is all Lit as well. So this is something I'm probably going to play with because this kind of reactivity is pretty cool. And Lit, the way it does it is using primitive comparison. So there's no reactivity. There's this really primitive change detection, and that is it. So this is like a really cool thing for Lit. Another thing that's really cool, if there's no questions about that, is Vimaroo. So me, the Vim guy, Vimaroo is a cool little project to train your motions. So you get that muscle memory for all the Vim commands that you might be doing. Another cool thing is a little app called Are the Types Wrong? And it's a project to analyze your NPM package for issues with TypeScript types and ESM module resolution. So they have a bunch of things that they check for. I have a couple things to go and fix in some of my packages, but it'll score you whether or not you have types, whether your things are masquerading as common as ESM, whether you're doing the right fallbacks, whether you're doing the right resolution, whether you're using unexpected syntax, whether you're doing named exports or not, and a few more things that I didn't list. But it's super useful. Go check it out. Check it on your packages, especially if you're like me, where I dual publish. I know that was before JSR, but if you're dual publishing, this is a great thing to check out to make sure that you're doing the right stuff.
I know that times can be heavy lately. So if you do need a little bit of joy, my kids and I were watching something called Homura Ham's Minecraft maze videos. Have you ever seen these?
I don't think so.
Oh my God, they're so cute. It's like someone has gotten to a lot of trouble to make these hamster mazes using like they built Minecraft blocks out of, I don't know what, cardboard, something. And they have their hamsters go through it, and it's really fun. Like they make a story out of it. And so the one that we saw was a Minecraft dungeon episode. So the hamster had to go through the Minecraft dungeons, and they set up the little, like the enemies and the mobs and stuff. And because the hamster's just like walking past, they like fall to destroy them. And then they edit it with sound effects and stuff to make it sound like Minecraft. It's just a very joyful experience.
Oh, wow. This has a lot of production value. I'm really impressed.
It has 2 million subscribers or something. So it's, I think, pretty popular.
No.
So if you need a little joy injection into your day, go check out Homura Ham's Minecraft maze videos. The other thing I think to calm you down is I've developed a new meditation. It's called JSR ASMR. And I would like to just leave you with that at the end of this episode. So you can look forward to that in a second. All right. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye. Have an excellent day. And I think we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at kamranigus.com and Erik is at erikonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.
Hello everyone, this is Kamran with a very special end of the episode segment called JSR ASMR. I'll be covering a few different things you can do with JSR. Please enjoy this light meditation retreat. Here I am, typing in JSR.io. And now, to publish a package using the command Deno publish. And now to install the package standard collections. And now I'd like to import the method SumOf from standard collections. This has been a very special segment of JSR ASMR. Have a wonderful evening or day, depending on your time zone.